So today I wanted to talk about this story that I read in Politico, which says that Zach Polanski plots review to junk Green's unpopular policies.
Okay.
And I thought it was an interesting one because it shines a light on a couple of things that we've been talking about, and particularly in this new landscape of what's going on, I think it reveals some things. So a couple of I've just realised the laptop is too far away for me to reach the microphone. There we go. So a couple of the policies that are set to be scrapped according to Politico, and some people have questioned this, but are the motorway speed limit policy. I'm not sure if it's a actual party policy or whether it's been put forward as a motion, but the policy was to limit the speed limit on motorways to 55 mile an hour, which is quite slow.
Very
55
slow.
miles an hour. And interestingly, Rupert Lowe's party, Restore Britain, have just announced a policy to increase the speed limits to 80 mile an hour. That's a really, really interesting explanation of what politics is doing at the moment and who people are trying to appeal to. I think that's really, really interesting. It says something. We can come back to it. But another one is that the article says that this was a couple of officials that are unnamed from the Green Party that have spoken to Politico. It's what they say. And these particular officials were wary of the return of a motion that actually avoided being debated at the spring conference just because of some technical issues. But the motion was Zionism is racism, and they're worried that that's going to come back as a motion. There was another one which is the party's states on its website that they want to aimed for a world without borders, and they're worried about the wording of that.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that are supposedly going to be scrapped. Now, I think this is interesting because what happens when a party starts out appealing to a certain section of the population, then tries to come into the mainstream, is they try and they try to make their platform more palatable for the average person. And this happens all the way through, and you can see how parties change their policies as they go.
Yeah.
My view is very much stick to your guns. If you think that motorway speed limit should be 55 miles an hour, go for it. Right? Let's let the public decide on these things. If you think that that there should be a world without borders, then state that. Like, I want to hear what my politicians believe, and I want to hear what parties believe. Now, the Green Party, they have quite a strange mechanism for enacting policy.
That was going to be my question. How do they set policy? Who
how
decides?
democratic is it? Exactly. And something that Polanski said is that when they had 20,000 members, it was very different to now that they've got 220,000 members.
Mm-hmm.
And they have to adapt, they have to change. And obviously it's not him as leader that decides on what policy is going to be. But they are, I think, attempting to create a more democratic way of creating policy.
Is that right? Because my guess would be they'd be looking to create a less democratic way of setting policy.
That's what they've said.
Okay.
I don't know if that's true or not, but they've also ditched a controversial push to promote what they deemed normal births. Have you heard of this?
No.
So there was a section in their manifesto which talked about reducing the rate of caesarean sections.
Okay.
And wanting to promote normal births in inverted commas and speech marks. And they want to get rid of that because that seems to be controversial. And there's a quote from one of these officials that he said, right now it's like we've got a list of policies for the Daily Mail to ring us up about. And I thought, that's really interesting. They're starting to think about the pushback from the right-wing press and how they're going to be attacked on these things. Question for you, what's the most controversial Green Party policy, or what's the one that you think is going to be most unpopular with the electorate?
Is it not legalise all drugs? That's the one I was waiting for you to say something about. You've not said it yet.
I mean, I don't think that's mentioned in this article, but yeah, that's the one that kind of sticks out, I think. And what I think is interesting, and it's similar to the World Without Borders point, is that you could make a case for, in an idealistic world, we wouldn't have borders in the way that they are currently. I think that there would always be a distinction, even if, there's free movement between two countries. You have to have some sort of line, otherwise there's no, those places no longer have an identity, right? A border
Yes.
is a way of identifying something, right, in a
Agreed.
philosophical sense. But they might be saying, in that idea of a world without borders, they don't want massive fences and barbed wire and etc. That might be a noble goal. There's a world in 200 years' time or whatever, to have such a peaceful and democratic world that we're able to do these things. The point is, like, you're campaigning in 2026 local elections. Why say something like that? You're just going to annoy a load of people.
Yeah.
And the people that are already on board, they don't need you to say that for them to support you.
But you're making a distinction there, I think, between which of your policies you push and whether or not you have that policy. So you could still have that policy, but not mention it, couldn't you?
But so much of our politics is sound bites, right? The World Without Borders point is a soundbite. It's not a policy. You can't have a policy to have a world without borders. You might have a policy, and they do, of safe and legal routes for immigration and asylum.
Yeah.
And they, Zach Polanski frequently speaks up about the issue of refugees and says, refugees are welcome here, et cetera, et cetera. That can be your angle, but then to say we want a world without borders, it's just unnecessary, and you're just going to get attacked a lot. So what I would say is decide on what your policies are, decide on what you want, and decriminalising drugs could be that, right? That's a genuine policy. Anything that's just sound bites and can get you attacked, there's no point in saying it.
And I think I might have driven you off course. You were about to say, what is the mechanism for deciding policy? What is the mechanism? Is it?
Oh, I don't know.
Okay.
I know in the SDP, but I don't know in the Green Party. But they do have motions at conference.
Yes.
Their conference will be in the autumn, like ours.
Yeah. Yeah.
A couple of other things then. So the Reform ditched their 2024 manifesto in the autumn. And it's something I didn't know about this until researching this yesterday. So I think it's an attempt to kind of very much separate themselves from the things they've pledged in the past, so they can come up with new things, and they don't have to kind of go through with a fine comb the policies that they'd already suggested and show that they disagree with them.
Yeah.
I think that's the mentality for it. But I mean, it was amazing that I didn't see anything about that they just ditched the whole manifesto, which of course was called a contract, not a manifesto, according to Mr. Farage.
And there's no democracy involved in their policy setting framework, is there?
No, I mean, it's quite, it's quite amusing in some ways, because there is literally no democratic element to the policy making and reform. They just kind of come out with stuff. And to be honest, if I'm being a bit mean, like, there isn't any policy anyway, so there's nothing to really create. I'm on the Reform website.
Okay.
I've been on the internet recently. A couple of policies then. There was one that says... I'm losing my place now. So they've got a lot of these sort of bullet points of, this is what we'll do, this is what we'll do. And this is since they ditched their manifesto. And they make these sort of wide claims about, number 14 is help British people have children. Okay. And you think, okay, that sounds like a good thing to do, helping people have children. I'll read you the policy. Family is the foundation of society. We will reduce the financial pressures that stop working people starting families, support parents, and remove policies that make having children unaffordable. Britain's future depends on supporting the next generation.
I've no idea what that means.
That's it.
Okay, so there's no
like, we will do this or we will do that. It's just, I love it because it's like, and people have used this term slopulist. Have you heard of this?
I think you've used that term before. I still don't really understand it, to be honest. You might have to explain it.
So of course it mixes populist with slop, and slop is a term that's being thrown about a lot recently because of AI and things just get, random rubbish that's getting put on the internet.
Okay.
And a lot of what people are saying is that quite a few populists out there are just throwing stuff onto the internet to say, oh, we'll do this, we'll do that.
Okay, yeah.
And I think it's a classic example of that. It's like, help people have children. Brilliant. What are you going to do? We're going to remove policies that make having children unaffordable. Okay.
What are they?
That's like saying, we want to increase wages. We're going to make sure that people are getting paid more.
Provide free childcare.
What? Well, yeah, I mean, there's, one thing. Well, what would you do? Well, help people have children.
Increase productivity so that we can afford, high wages in good quality jobs. One of the SDP's policy is to allow parents to share a tax allowance so that if one's working and the other isn't, they can make the most use of that tax allowance. Those are the kind of things that I would think are practical ways. Housing, yeah, absolutely. More affordable houses. Yeah, but it doesn't say any of that.
No, which is quite remarkable. So anyway, that's a bit about the Green Party's policies and some of their wackier ones.
And that's reform.
That's a bit about reform.
Yeah.
What about the SDP? What are, if somebody's attacking us, and the Daily Mail does a hit piece,
yes,
and it goes through our manifesto and finds the wacky ones, what are the policies it comes up with?
Oh, the Daily Mail.
Daily Mail. I knew this is coming. Yeah.
Oh,
go on, explain the Daily Mail. And you're now on question time.
Okay.
You're being
I've got to. You want
interrogated.
Me to support it?
No, I want you to be honest.
Oh, right. Okay.
But explain to us what the Daily Mail policy is.
So the Daily Mail policy says that all children will run a mile daily, presumably meaning the days that they're in school, so Monday to Friday. Yes, walk or run. Yes. I just really worry that it's impossible to do practically. The idea that I'm presuming they can't run it on their own, so the teachers are running it too. Not sure that all teachers would embrace that as a thing that they should be spending their time doing. I'm not sure I want to sit next to a sweaty boy who's run a mile. Sorry if that's not a nice thing to say, but, my memory of what boys smelt like in school was bad enough without them running a daily mile.
I was thinking this recently, that we would do PE lessons in the morning or at any point in the day. We wouldn't shower and then we'd go back to class. Yeah. It's horrible.
Yeah. Although, I think when I was a kid, you only had a bath once a week, I know people think that's absolutely ridiculous.
Is that like when you get sewn into your clothes, but your winter clothes, right? And then you're left in your winter clothes for 6 months.
Well, you weren't sewn in, but yeah, you did.
That's the stories I hear about the Victorian times.
Yeah, well, I'm not quite that old, Sebastian.
The couple other policies from the Greens that they're wanting to axe is abolishing the monarchy.
Okay.
And
happy with that.
What do you mean, that they're axing abolishing the monarchy? Or
they're axing abolishing it. Sorry.
You want to abolish the monarchy?
I would do, yeah.
Oh, we really disagree on this?
Yeah.
Wow. Did you know I'm very, very much pro-monarchy?
Yeah.
Get that quiet. And making private landlords illegal. That's another one that they've got in there that they're thinking of cutting.
Making private landlords illegal, so there'd be the only landlords would be public service bodies, councils and so on.
So a friend of ours, Charlie Winstanley, who wrote a book called Bricking It.
Yes.
Which we could definitely put in the description if anyone wants to go and read it. On the housing crisis, we went to his book launch and he talked about the fact that post-Second World War, when there was a massive increase in the state building capacity, the number of private landlords decreased massively because of that.
Yeah,
I think it's a very noble goal as a state to do something like that. The state should be involved, and a natural consequence of that, you will have fewer and fewer people that are making money off being a landlord.
Yes.
Now, there's no way that I would put in a manifesto, we're going to make private landlords illegal, because what it sounds like is people that are either landlords or renting and are very happy with the relationship. It's like, well, you're making this thing illegal.
Yeah.
It's a really bad PR strategy. I think a lot of their policies, like abolishing the monarchy as well, they're starting to realise that if they want to be popular in the mainstream, they have to ditch a lot of these things. I just think that, and this is what's interesting about comparing the Reform and the Greens, and I think they're relevant in a way that the Labour and the Tories just aren't relevant at the moment at all, is that they're both trying to do the same thing from either sides of the political spectrum. And both are going to find it really, really difficult because they're going to move away from their base.
Yes.
Right. So Reform's base, and I don't mean the people in the streets that we meet that are saying, I'm going to vote for Nige. That's not Reform's base. They recognise there are problems with Reform, but they want to vote for Reform as a bit of they have no other alternative, right?
Yeah.
That's what they feel. That's what we're trying to convince them otherwise. Reform's base are much more economically liberal and economically sort of free market. The core Reform supporters, and I went to a talk from somebody that works within Reform, right in the centre of it recently. I told you about, and it was amazing to me that he said, I questioned him and said, how is Reform going to move across and try and be more palatable to the majority of the public who are very much in favour of things like the NHS and much more like economically left-wing ideas. And he said, oh, no, I don't think those people are really left-wing. The people I was talking about, the meeting on the streets. And I thought, oh, wow, that's really interesting. He said, and that's where a politician will lose. You have to meet people where they're at, right?
Yeah.
You can't say, oh, no, but we're right. We just have to convince the public that they're wrong. It's not going to work. So Reform are going to have to try and move left on the economy, and they'll find difficulties within that as they publish more policies. And Greens are having to move sort of away, or let's say right on culture. And right on culture for the Greens is like, it's not saying much, but they're going to have to axe policies like abolishing the monarchy. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Obviously, as an STP advocate, I would say this is our opportunity of being basically in between that and saying, actually, there are some really good economic left-wing ideas out there. And a lot of the social stuff, we've just gone way too far in one direction.
Yeah.
And I think that message can resonate. Obviously, our job is to convince people that we can actually win. But it's a really interesting political landscape at the moment.
It is, absolutely. And I think it's right that whatever the guy from Reform said, a lot of people are not ready for kind of reheated Thatcherism, which feels to me what Reform is, really. So I do think a lot of Reform voting is just a way of sticking two fingers up at the establishment rather than anybody being really committed to Reform's agenda, which we don't even know what it is really, do we? As you say, it's just a lot of vibe words, would you call them?
Yeah, it's all vibes.
Yeah.
That's how you'd actually one sentence to discuss politics in 2026. It's all vibes. That's all it is. The Green Party put out a really interesting thing. So do you remember in the Gorton and Denton by-election?
Yep.
Hannah Spencer's campaign, the Green Party candidate who went on to become the MP, they did a video in Urdu and then one in Bangla, I believe, as well, Bengali. And it was criticised heavily, particularly online, people saying any election material should be in English, which I agree with. I think all election material should be in a language that of that place.
Or Welsh.
Yeah, so I was going to say, so Wales, Welsh, etc. I think that's perfectly reasonable. Now, they've really lent into this, and this is a really good way of understanding the it's all vibes thing. And they've published a set of a wording which is like, we must stop Reform and reject Labour. And they published it in an election leaflet. This was Mothin Ali, the deputy leader.
Yeah.
And they've published it in all these different languages: Urdu, Arabic, Bangla, right? And I like that, right? Because I'm like, okay, well, that's what they believe. So like, stick to your guns, show us who you are. I really believe in that, and it's why I think what Rupert Lowe's doing is great. I disagree with him completely on so many political things, but it's like, that's what you believe, and there are a lot of other people that think that. So let's have it out. And I think that's interesting because the establishment, the Labour and the Tories, they wouldn't have done that. They'd have backed away and tried to kind of go away quietly on certain issues. Whereas the Greens and Reform are much more sort of gloves off, right? So they're really leaning into a lot of these things.
Yeah, but it makes it quite a heated and confrontational atmosphere, doesn't it?
Yes, that's why it's so important for us to try and rebuild that political arena where we can have those debates where you say, okay, I'm going to externalize these things. I'm not going to just think, oh, because you believe that you're a bad person.
Yeah.
And we're going to have that conversation about whether election material should be in many languages to be inclusive, or whether it should only be in English, Welsh, etc.
Yeah.
That the moment we're sort of hopefully embarking upon that and getting towards it, I do think we're going through a transition phase where it's all a bit weird, but it will get there. I saw an interesting interview with Richard Tice, just as a little segue, but it was with I think it was with LBC. I can't remember which one of them, but he was asked about deporting people that have come here illegally.
Okay.
And he said, yeah, just deport them. And the person said, but how are you going to deport them? And he said, well, we'll just, if they come from Afghanistan, we'll just send them back to Afghanistan. And he goes, but how? And he's like, well, we'll just do it. And he's like, but we can't, you fly a plane in there and just drop them off? We don't have an agreement with Afghanistan. Yeah. And he's like, oh, well, it'll be fine. And Germany have an agreement, so Germany do deport. He made the case that Germany do it. And it's like, yeah, but Germany's got an agreement. Would you have an agreement? Because he obviously doesn't want to say he's going to sign an agreement with the Taliban to, And I thought that's another example where it's like, it's vibes. They've thrown something out there. We're going to deport people. But he hasn't got actually a clear roadmap of how he's going to do it.
Yes.
And as a party that is hoping to enter the fray of the big five, make it the big six.
Yeah.
We have to be really seriously thinking about detailed policy, and not just we want this, but how we're actually going to deliver it.
Yeah.
If the civil service pushes back on certain things, how are we going to deal with that? I think there's so many different questions about government and actually the mechanisms of government that it's incumbent on political parties to say how they're going to deal with those issues if they get to that position.
Yeah, and I think to be honest about how big a job it is, because it is a really, really big job to, and it takes a lot of intellectual thought and consideration, and lots of consideration of the legal case and the legal background, and none of that happens through vibes.